Okay. Analysis. What makes a move overpowered?
Anyone who's ever played a fighting game has run into a move they thought was cheap, overpowered, or even broken. But how do we know if a move is actually too powerful, or if the player is just being a giant crybaby?
Okay, so from my own experience, back in the day, whenever I played Marvel vs. Capcom 3, when it first came out, I played with Sentinel, and my buddy could, and I was always versing like either like my one friend, like one of two friends, like it was either my buddy Kyle or my buddy Darren, and they absolutely hated when I would do Sentinel's down medium because it had super armor, and I think it hit low. Um, and every time I whipped it out, they just could not help but to get hit by it. That, coupled with the fact that Sentinel hit really hard and did just like way too much damage for his own good. Like my boys were seething, absolutely seething whenever I would do that. They would just be like, "How do I dodge that move?" And they would just sit there and complain the whole time. It's like, well, dude, it's like you could super jump, you can normal jump, you can block, you can chicken block, you can push block, whatever. You know, just you got to be quicker. They would actually hate me for doing down medium and starting combos like that way all the time. Oh man, it was so funny. Good old days.
Of course, anyone can tell why this move is powerful. But not as many can understand why this is powerful. Some things like damage and range are clearly visible to the average spectator, but the stuff you can't see is usually where the supposed cheapness happens. I'm of course talking about
a lot of the times. Oh my god, even in Super Smash Brothers. Oh my god. Like back when what was it? Brawl, like the Meta Knight Snake meta. It would always be me versus my buddy Kyle, and I would always be the cheap ass playing Meta Knight, and he would always be the cheap ass playing Snake. Grenade sliding everywhere. And it's because like Snake was cheap in his own way with like the whole like grenade sliding. It's like you wave dash and you somehow canceled it and made it so that like because you had this huge disjointed hitbox is essentially what I'm getting at. A lot of the moves hit way further than their animations portray, which was incredibly frustrating to do and deal with because it's like not only did you have to account for like when Snake has like a grenade in his hands, like he can throw another grenade, he can put down a C4, and then you have to like keep track of like three things right there. And then is he gonna like throw the grenade? Is he just gonna like block and just eat the explosion? And he's just gonna go into shield? Like, what are you gonna do? Or is he just gonna like dash and grenade slide on me with the grenade in his hand? It's like there's so many things to keep track of. I mean, you know, much the same way like Meta Knight. What was it? Meta Knight was just good. Like his moves came out quick. They did a lot of damage. They had gigantic hitboxes, way bigger than they had any right to be. So, yeah.
Frame data, the backbone of how fighting works in games. Frame data is something that fascinates me and bores people to death at the same time, and it certainly doesn't sound as sexy as other fighting game concepts like Guard Crush or Sex Kick. While you don't have to be a frame data god to enjoy these games, I feel that just understanding some basic concepts can help you realize the true potential of the move.
All this frame data basic stuff, this is like you're exiting the casual part of the bell curve and you're entering the intermediate part of the bell curve. This is like this is where a lot of people end up, you know, like once they get into like fighting games and whatnot. But then you can easily get lost in the sauce just with one character in learning the matchups with one, like your main character versus the entire other cast. So very easy to get lost.
Also, your whining will be rooted in more theory and what's not to like about that.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with hitboxes and hurtboxes. Often when you punch someone in a game, you're not actually hitting them with your fist. You're hitting them with an invisible hitbox, which is this red thing. And when you get hit, it's not your body that gets hit, it's your hurtbox. Depending on the game, the hit and hurtboxes more or less accurately coincide with the character animations. In Mortal Kombat X, the hurtboxes are directly attached to the actual 3D
Dang, that is actually crazy.
player model, which
They're actually, this is really cool. They're actually connected to like the player. It's not like you're hitting a square and it's like somebody does like a, I don't know, like a front kick or something, and it just hits like the area in front of their torso, and it's like, oh, how'd that hit me? That's really crazy.
means you can be standing idle, but still have your hurtbox moving because of your breathing animation. The way you design these hit and hurtboxes affect.
Oh my god. And the, what was this? The Super Smash hitboxes were so wonky. Oh, this is so funny. Because they're all circles. They were hitboxes, they were hit circles. And then your character was just made up of like either circles or bubbles or whatever.
The way the game feels, and is a way to make a move more powerful or weaker by changing their sizes. Generally, the cheaper move will trend towards a bigger hitbox and a smaller hurtbox.
Oh yeah.
In addition to boxes, nearly every attack in a fighting game has 3 phases. They're called the startup, active, and recovery frames. But I think it helps to look at it as simply beginning, middle, and end. If you watch this famous clip of Holly Holm kicking Ronda Rousey in the head, the startup would be where she begins her kick and lifts her leg up. The active frames would be when her foot is capable of causing damage, and the recovery frames would be her leg going back down. Of course, each part of the kick has to be measured with a unit of time, and coincidentally we can use frames per second because this video clip and most fighting games run at 60 frames per second. So why does the duration of time for each phase of an attack matter? I think the best way to explain this is to use examples outside of hand-to-hand combat. Let's begin.
Okay, all this stuff matters because as fighting games, you know, move forward with the gaming industry, like the things that you thought were cheap back in the day, you had no idea or concept like why they were cheap or why someone would use like a certain tactic or whatever. At least for me, when I first got into fighting games, instead of like whining and complaining about something, it's like, okay, you can actually learn to get better. And, you know, not just cry about it.
Begin with startup frames. If you've ever seen a Civil War movie, it's immediately obvious why we don't use rifle muskets anymore. It has a ridiculous startup time, and by the time you're able to do any damage, you might already be dead. When it comes to startup, we want it to be faster! But while loading a rifle musket takes a long time, firing it takes a fraction of a second. The time that the bullet is in the air is what we can call active frames, also known as the only time when an attack can do damage. The red hitbox that I showed you earlier represents the active frames, and you'll notice they only appear for a short period of time. Having lots of active frames can be good because the chances of your opponent getting hit by your attack is higher. While flying bullets and kicks have a small amount of active frames, some weapons have a ton of active frames. For example, a flamethrower. As long as the flame is out there, it'll be capable of doing damage in a way that just sticking your leg out there would not. It's no accident that Dalsim's Yoga Flame has a lot of active frames and is what makes this move powerful. Of course, the ultimate active frame weapon would be the lightsaber, because it's always lethal whether you swing it or not. Kendo teachers have actually pointed out that a real lightsaber fight would be more like a mix of kendo and fencing rather than the flashy swordplay you see in Star Wars. After the active
But, you know, a lot of temporary suspension of disbelief helps, you know.
frames, the third and final part of the attack is recovery frames. To explain this one, I'm going to go to baseball. A typical swing in baseball has what's known as the follow-through.
Step 7 is follow through.
And this would be called recovery frames in a fighting game. With the amount of force you're exerting, you have to wait until your follow-through or recovery frames are finished before you can do anything else, such as run towards first base or block. It's unavoidable because physics. But what if you want to hit the ball without all these time-consuming recovery frames? One way to do it is this. Bunting requires much less force, thus requiring little to no follow-through. Of course, you're not going to hit any home runs while bunting, but you're able to run immediately after the ball makes contact with the bat, making it a decent strategy to just get to first base. But what if you want to do a hard swing and have the lack of recovery frames of a bunt? Well, in Street Fighter 4, you could do this with what's known as FADC, or Focus Attack Dash Cancel.
Oh,
the
yeah.
keyword here is cancel, which means you can do a hard-hitting move and bypass the recovery frame so that you can begin your next move immediately.
But the whole reason why FADC is like widely accepted is because it's like a technique that everybody can do and implement in their gameplay. Whereas if somebody is just given a really overpowered move, it kind of feels unfair.
If this existed in baseball, it might look like this.
A war hero as Derek Jeter.
Oh god,
hits one
that's
deep
actually
to
really
center
cool.
field. De Jesus back, still back, track, wall.
What?
Canceling is a huge part of fighting games, and they were originally an unintended side effect in Street Fighter 2, originating from its input leniency algorithm. Now with startup, active, and recovery frames out of the way, there are just two more concepts to understand, and that's hit stun and block stun. If you've ever played a beat-em-up game, you've seen this before.
Oh,
Smack
yeah.
an enemy once and watch them have a seizure where they can't do anything for a short period of time. This state is aptly called hit stun, where you can't block and are completely vulnerable to getting smacked again. As you might have guessed, this
Bro, I played when MVC first came out, or at least 3, like my buddy would get so pissed that I would juggle him in combos for the longest time, and he would always go off and say, "Oh, the only reason why you're winning is you're doing a combo on me." But I'm like, dude, that's the whole point of a fighting game. He couldn't grasp, like, how do I get out of hit stun? You don't get in hit stun in the first place. Just don't get hit. It's that simple. And it's just hard to explain that.
This is how combos can happen in games and in real life. If your attack causes enough hit stun and your next attack has a fast enough startup, you will do a combo. If not, your opponent will have enough time to recover and block the next hit. Block
Right.
stun is the same concept, except you guessed it, they're blocking. If your attack causes little block stun and your attack has a lot of recovery, expect your opponent to hit you with a counter attack. If you've ever pondered about how ridiculous beat-em-up games are by the fact that one dude can slaughter hundreds of henchmen, it's because your dude, or waifu, has a super fast startup, lots of active frames, short recovery, and causes a shit ton of hit stun and block stun. Basically, you are overpowered, and honestly, this feels fun as hell in a single player or co-op environment.
Yeah.
But these beat-em-up mechanics would make for a lousy fighting game, as some of you might have found out when having to commit fratricide at the end of two-player Double Dragon. There's actually a fine line between a fighting game and a beat-em-up, and at one point the two terms were used interchangeably to refer to the same genre. And games like Pit Fighter really blurred the lines by having both cooperative play and versus play in the same game.
Oh my god, I could not imagine a 3-player like this is obviously a 3D like playing field or whatever. This is like the weirdest shit that I can imagine. Like, no wonder this genre didn't survive. Like, oh man, this is so funny.
Mode. What finally made the distinction of the fighting genre clear was when games focused on the versus play more than single player or co-op, which suddenly made balance a crucial issue. A CPU boss isn't going to complain when you do broken shit like this to him.
Oh my
But
god.
beating a human opponent like that might
Oh
cause
my.
this to happen. Now, I understand fighting games being a little broken can be fun, but that's a topic for another video.
Oh
The
yeah.
point I want to make is that the emphasis on balance through frame data and hitboxes is what brings a game closer to the fighting genre. This is why I think it'd be hard to call World of Warcraft PvP a fighting game, even though it has frame data and hitboxes. It's just not
What? Does it? Dang. Wait, no, there's like a global cooldown, and then certain moves are off the global cooldown. What?
not emphasized in a way where people have mapped out entire charts of frame data for nearly every attack and animation, and this is if it's not already in the game. Because the competitive players are the best at finding overpowered moves, they're often hired to help with the development, and this is not too unlike how nefarious hackers end up getting a job doing cybersecurity in the FBI, minus the THC issue. Let me know what your favorite overpowered fighting game move is in the comments. This was Gerald from Corey Gaming. Thanks for watching, and
What? They all the hackers can't get hired because they all smoke pot? That's what it said. Just let them smoke pot, dude. It's not that it's not that bad.
subscribe for more.
Oh man. This is a nice little video. I love Corey Gaming. Like 6 years old, like bro, this I don't know. Like every time I watch a Corey gaming video, I want to go back and play fighting games more. But I know it's like it's a huge time investment because most of the time you're just like in the training mode trying to figure out combos, what character is good and bad, or like at least you want to play or whatever, and then you gotta hopefully hone your skills in the ladder or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I will one day, but oh, I love Corey gaming videos. This is like it's awesome. Definitely great video. I want to see more. Maybe I'll just bum around and watch some more of his stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. All right, see ya.